Apple is releasing its public beta of iOS 10 today, and you probably just stopped listening so you could go download it. If you're still here though, come with me and let's dig into what this beta actually brings to the table. First off, I've been playing with this very build for a couple of days now, and you can relax. So far, it's been pretty stable. Sure, you will experience plenty of hiccups, but I haven't seen any showstoppers yet. Still, if you'd prefer not to restart or troubleshoot your phone, really, please, just stick to the iOS you already have. Here's what you've got to remember going into this. Not all of the stuff Apple hyped up works yet. So Siri will eventually let you send money through Square Cash or track runs with Map My Run just by asking, but you can't do that today.
Pay Anthony $80 for a musical using Square Cash.
I don't see an app for that. You'll need to download one.
Ditto for getting apps like Skype and WhatsApp to display calls on your lock screen. This version of iOS 10 also doesn't consistently transcribe your voicemails or get lyrics for your songs or let you use Apple Pay on the web. I'll highlight more things that don't work as we dig into the rest of the iOS 10 beta, but make no mistake, this is just a preview of things to come. Let's start with the look and feel. The font is thicker by default, notifications and widgets are neatly contained in bubbles, and generally, things just feel a lot cleaner. Speaking of widgets, you'll now see them when you 3D touch a supported app, and One Touch lets you add it to your redesigned Today feed. Now, they can be tricky. The weather widget has literally never told me what the temperature is outside. Raise to Look is great for checking notifications too, and while I didn't always love how fast the Touch ID sensor in the iPhone 6s and 6s Plus worked, Apple now requires you to push the home button to unlock instead of just laying a finger on it, which is kind of nice. Oh, and you can search with Spotlight from just anywhere, just swipe down from the top of the screen. Speaking of, the typing experience is kinder to emoji now, as the keyboard suggests them when it detects a word that matches one. It's too bad that other keyboard suggestions, like free time based on your calendar, don't always seem to work the way you'd want them to. Now, these changes might not blow your mind, but I have to admit I did feel a little faster using an iPhone because of them. Nearly all of the cool stuff Apple highlighted for messages works just fine. You can handwrite things, you can send heartbeats with digital touch, leave tap-back reactions on things people send you, and more. My favorite so far, using bubble effects to yell at other people and sending gifts based off keywords. It's also dead simple to share a recent photo now since you have a live camera preview as soon as you tap the photo icon. You should hold off on sending your racy messages though. See, if you send an invisible ink message to someone who doesn't have iOS 10, the message appears normally with a follow-up that says sent with invisible ink, which is not ideal. Now, there's a lot to like here, and it's all pretty fun, but it kind of feels like overkill. Apple is facing a lot of competition from other messaging apps, and this seems like it's throwing stuff against the wall just to see what sticks. Now into photos, at first glance, you might not even notice much difference here. The Moments view is the same and your albums are now laid out in a grid. The biggest change here is that Apple chews not only on your photos' metadata, but what's depicted in them to organize them. It's actually a lot like Google Photos, except all of the machine learning magic happens on the phone itself. The downside is if you have a ton of photos like I do, it takes iOS a long time to initially scan them all. Things are pretty great once that's done though. You can now search for things like cat, or drinks, or bikes, and the results are surprisingly on the mark. Your photos automatically get bunched into memories too, like best of the year and last weekend. Beyond photos, you'll get to see where the photos were taken and who's in them, but the auto-created video montages Apple teased never loaded properly for me. On the plus side, you can edit live photos now, and all the changes you make apply not just to the still, but the brief video that surrounds it. Honestly, live photos still aren't my thing, but this is a really welcome move. Apple Maps and iOS 10 just scored some major points because the navigation interface is huge. Seriously, it's so much easier to read at a glance than Google Maps that I could almost see myself switching. There's also a little weather display in the corner, and the app is better about suggesting places you might want to go to and how to get there. You'll eventually see other apps like OpenTable hook into locations you find in Maps for reservations and stuff, but that'll only happen when iOS 10 launches for real. Apple Music got a big overhaul, and it starts with the look. It's all bright colors and bold text. It's actually pretty divisive. I don't mind it, but other people who have seen it are not thrilled. By default, you're dropped off in the library where you can access all of the songs you've saved or downloaded. And instead of just giving you a bunch of random playlists you might like, the For You section does a better job of explaining why its choices might be up your alley. Now that Connect tab is finally gone, so posts from acts you like will wind up here too. Thankfully, they're buried at the bottom and really easy to ignore if you hate them as much as I do. Really though, the most important thing here is the search function getting a tab of its own, making it a little easier to find the hot tracks you've been looking for. Like Music, Apple News also got a facelift that's big on bright colors and large text, and again, the biggest change is the For You section, which is to say it finally works. The top stories listed are the same on an iOS 9 device as they are on the iOS 10 beta, but the update brings subsections of stories that are better tuned to your interests. Throw in notifications for breaking news, and we finally got a version of Apple News that feels like it's worth using. Apple also made it easier to control your HomeKit-enabled gadgets with a new Home app, which we couldn't really test because I don't have any HomeKit gear. As I've said, Siri's biggest new trick is interfacing with third-party apps, but those don't work yet, and neither do most of the changes to the phone app. We won't have a final version of iOS 10 to pass judgment on until the fall, but Apple's made some really valuable steps forward here. iOS 9 built the foundation for a lot of these features, and with iOS 10 we're seeing Apple try to figure out how they all work together best. Sometimes that means rewriting the rules, and other times that means letting people build stuff on top of them. How well that'll all work is the big question, and we should have our answer in a few months.